Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're looking at something pretty cool happening in the world of AI.
Oh, yeah.
It has to do with a new language model called Claude 3.7 Sonnet,
Okay.
and it's from Änthropic. And the really fascinating thing about this one is that it's the first of its kind to kind of combine these two different approaches we've been seeing in AI.
Okay.
The non-reasoning and the reasoning.
Interesting.
Yeah, so, the non-reasoning is kind of like having this massive library of information.
Right.
And the reasoning is like being able to analyze and understand all that information.
It sounds like they've taken the best of both worlds and really merged them together.
Yeah, and that's why this new hybrid model is causing such a stir in the AI world.
And it's really opening up new possibilities.
Absolutely. So instead of just, spitting out facts or just blindly following instructions, this Claude 3.7 Sonnet can actually think about whatever task you give it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And this new capability is what they're calling extended thinking mode.
So that's what allows it to actually tackle the more complex tasks that maybe previous models would have really struggled with.
Exactly. And here's the thing that I think is really exciting. Claude 3.7 Sonnet isn't just locked away in some research lab somewhere.
Oh, that's great.
Änthropic has actually made it available through an API
Okay.
to everyone from, individual developers all the way up to huge companies.
That's fantastic.
So an API, you can kind of think of it like a bridge that allows different software applications to be able to talk to each other.
Well, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And by making this technology accessible, Änthropic is really kind of pushing those boundaries of what we can do with AI.
Absolutely.
So among all the amazing things that Claude 3.7 Sonnet can do, there's one feature that really caught my eye, and it's called Claude Code.
Okay.
And this is a tool that is specifically designed for coding, and it lives right in your terminal.
So it's like having a really intelligent coding partner right there with you at all times.
Exactly. And, it can do so many things like, help you search through your code or read it and understand it.
Wow.
And it can even suggest edits or improvements.
It's like having someone to help you debug all those really frustrating issues that we all encounter when we're coding.
Oh, totally. When you're just staring at lines of code
Yeah.
and you can't figure out what went wrong?
Yeah.
Claude Code can actually pinpoint the problem and suggest solutions.
That's really useful.
Yeah. And it's not just about fixing errors. Anthropic's own developers found it to be super helpful for things like test-driven development.
Oh, yeah.
For those who may not be familiar with test-driven development, it's basically you write tests for your code before you actually write the code.
Oh, right. Okay.
And that helps make sure that it works the way it's supposed to and to catch any bugs early on.
Gotcha.
And what's really impressive is that Claude Code can suggest test cases based on the code you've already written.
Oh, wow.
So it makes the whole process much more efficient.
Änthropic even reported that it helped their team complete a task that normally would have taken 45 minutes in just a single pass.
Wow.
Which is a huge time saver.
Talk about a productivity boost.
That's incredible.
It seems like they really wanted to create a model that could really handle those real-world coding challenges.
They certainly put it to the test.
They did. And to see how it stacked up against the competition, they ran Claude 3.7 Sonnet through all kinds of benchmark tests.
Which are kind of like standardized exams for AI models.
Exactly. So one of those tests was the SW-Dench.
Okay.
And that one is all about how well an AI model can understand and write code.
So you could say it measures coding fluency.
Right. And Claude 3.7 Sonnet got an impressive 62.3% accuracy.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's even better than the top performing reasoning model right now.
How much did that one get?
Only 49.3%.
So it's a pretty substantial difference.
Yeah, it really shows how focused Änthropic was on making this model excel at these practical coding tasks.
Yeah, and that focus on the real-world performance really becomes even more obvious when you look at how it performed in some of the other benchmarks.
Like what?
Well, these benchmarks were designed to mimic some of those everyday tasks.
Like,
Things like making purchases online or even booking flights.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Claude 3.7 Sonnet really shined in these tests. It really outperformed some of the other leading models out there.
So it sounds like they really weren't just going for high scores on those theoretical tests.
No, they really wanted to build an AI that could actually make a difference in people's lives.
I like that.
It's a real shift in the way we're thinking about AI.
Yeah, moving beyond that academic realm and thinking about how we can use AI to solve problems that people are dealing with every single day.
Right.
So we've seen that Claude 3.7 Sonnet is amazing at coding and all these real-world tasks, but I'm kind of curious, are there any areas where maybe it isn't quite as strong?
Well, while it did do incredibly well in all of those practical tests that we were just talking about, it didn't actually get the top scores and the benchmarks that were really focused on that theoretical knowledge.
Oh, okay.
Like really advanced math or scientific concepts.
So it's a coding whiz and it can book flights, but maybe not a theoretical physicist yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
And this was actually something that Änthropic did very deliberately.
Oh, right.
They prioritized those practical applications over getting like the absolute highest scores in those purely academic tests.
So it's all about what people are actually going to be using this for in their everyday lives.
Exactly.
I mean, how often do we really need an AI to, solve complex equations versus something like booking a flight or helping us figure out directions in a new city?
Right. And to really test those practical skills, what Änthropic did?
What?
They used Pokemon gameplay as a way to test it.
Pokemon? Seriously?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
They set it up so that Claude had this like basic memory of the game, and it could see the pixels on the screen and had these functions that could actually control the character.
So they basically turned the game into like a real-world simulation for the AI.
Exactly.
That's so cool. So how did it actually do playing against Pikachu and all the others?
Well, the older versions of Claude, the ones without that extended thinking mode, couldn't even get out of the starting house in the game.
Oh, no. So they're stuck in the tutorial forever.
But with Claude 3.7 Sonnet, with these new reasoning abilities, it was actually able to battle the gym leaders and even earn badges.
Wow.
It really shows you just how powerful that thinking capability is when it comes to problem solving.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what other hidden talents this AI has. But I guess it's not really about the game itself, right?
No, it's really more about what that kind of performance actually represents.
Yeah.
The ability to really stay focused and strategize and achieve these goals in a really complex environment. It's huge for developing much more sophisticated AI agents for the real world.
So those skills it learned battling Pokemon could be used for things like robots that need to navigate really complex spaces.
Yeah.
Or AI assistants that can handle much more complicated tasks.
Right.
Or even self-driving cars that are better able to, understand and react to the world around them.
Absolutely. The possibilities are really incredible.
Yeah.
But, with all this advanced technology, there always comes the question of cost.
Right. Let's talk about the money. How much does it actually cost to use this powerful new AI?
Well, it is a little bit more expensive than some of the other options out there, like OpenAI.
Okay.
It's about $3 per 1 million input tokens, and then $15 per 1 million output tokens.
Okay, so for those of us who don't speak AI, what exactly are tokens?
Well, you can think of tokens as those individual units of language that the AI has to process.
Okay.
So that could be a word, a punctuation mark, even just part of a word. And so the cost is all based on how many of these tokens are processed both in the input and the output of the AI.
So the more complex the task, the more tokens are used and the higher the price tag.
Right. But there is a way for developers to manage those costs.
Okay.
They can actually set limits on the number of tokens that are used in the responses. So it's kind of a balancing act between performance and affordability.
So it gives them more control over their budget.
Exactly. But, beyond the costs, we also have to think about one of the most important things with any kind of AI, especially one that's this powerful.
Safety.
Absolutely.
It seems like Änthropic has taken that responsibility pretty seriously.
They have. They've done a lot of testing with all these outside experts to make sure that it meets those high standards for safety, security, and reliability.
Well, that's good to hear. So what kind of safety measures are we actually talking about here?
Well, one of the biggest areas they focused on was improving how well Claude 3.7 Sonnet can recognize and handle harmful requests.
Okay.
So it's much better now at identifying those potentially problematic prompts, which has actually reduced unnecessary rejections by about 45% compared to the older versions.
Wow, that's a huge improvement.
It is. It really shows that they're working hard to make sure their AI is responsible.
And that's something we all need to be paying attention to as AI becomes a bigger part of our lives.
Definitely.
So it really does sound like they're committed to building an AI that's not just powerful, but also safe and trustworthy.
Yeah, definitely.
And, as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into this Claude 3.7 Sonnet,
Yeah.
what are some of the biggest takeaways that you think our listeners should keep in mind?
Well, I think one of the main things is that it really is a big step forward in AI. It's not just like small improvements here and there.
Well, yeah.
It's really like a whole different way of thinking about AI, especially when it comes to focusing on how we can use it in the real world.
We've seen how amazing it is at coding and doing everyday tasks.
Right.
And even navigating that Pokemon world.
It's pretty wild, right?
It really feels like we're getting closer and closer to AI that can really understand the world around it.
Yeah, and that makes me think about something. You know, we talked about how well it did in those Pokemon tests and how well it could strategize and achieve goals.
Yeah.
What other things in the real world could benefit from that kind of problem solving?
That's a great question. You know, we've already mentioned robotics and self-driving cars.
Yeah.
But what about things like healthcare
Oh, yeah.
or finance?
Could we have AI helping doctors diagnose diseases or helping financial analysts make better investment decisions?
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
I think as this technology keeps getting better and better,
Yeah.
we're going to see some really creative and amazing uses for it in all kinds of industries.
It sounds like we're just at the beginning of a really incredible time for AI.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Claude 3.7 Sonnet.
It's been great exploring all this with you.
And for our listeners, if you want to learn more about Claude 3.7 Sonnet and just dive deeper into this whole world of AI, be sure to check out the links we've got in the show notes.
Yeah. You'll find stuff on Anthropic's website and some really cool articles about those benchmark test results and so much more.
Keep learning, everyone.
Yeah, keep those brains engaged and your curiosity levels high.
Until next time.
Happy exploring.